going to start with a big O. Bit of news around him, John?
So he's got his flag, his legacy is secure. So certainly there's talk about a potential retirement. Now, he had an epidural in his back halfway through the year. He just couldn't get out in the park. And so I think that was the real consideration for him. But his last 8 weeks were his best. And so with Sam Draper coming out for pretty serious Achilles, if he moved on, they'd probably have to bring in some ruck cover. So they're very keen for him to go on. He's considering his future. Cal Archie will move to the Adelaide Football Club, probably a 4-year deal. The big worry right now is for Brandon Starcevich. So he's had a 4th concussion in 14 months. This was not as significant as the one that saw him out for 3 months, but Eagles have put a deal that is significant. So it's 900 grand as much as 6 years. They have contacted those around him in the last 48 hours. They're worried about this concussion. It's not a 6-year deal that's guaranteed. I can tell you tonight that it's got some game-based triggers. So it might be 4 or 5 years guaranteed, and then you've got to play a certain amount of games to get that 6th year. Here he is getting concussed again. Let's not sugarcoat it, guys. It's a really serious issue here. That was the issue that put him out for 3 months. And so what would you be thinking? Would you be second-guessing yourself if you're West Coast? Right now, that deal is still on the table.
I watched that and I thought, I wonder what that means for the contract that is potentially going to come his way. I think they would. Yeah, I think maybe the length of it you could seriously consider. It's a lot of money to commit to someone who's had a lot of previous issues in terms of concussion.
I think that's the important one, though, is that from a due diligence point of view and from the overall health of the club of West Coast is, are you happy to enter into something like this, like a potential 6-year deal, 5 minimum, at $900,000? And what happens if he rolls up, John, first game next year, which we hope doesn't happen, and suffers another concussion?
I think it's a league-wide issue more than a West Coast issue. I think it's a fair bet for West Coast to take, assuming that they've got recompense somewhere built in from the AFL to be able to take that risk with the position that they're in.
They're the ones
to
offering a 6-year deal, Bucks. So.
Yeah, but to get a high-quality player. And as you said, there's triggers attached to it. So there might be some security and safety mechanisms for them for the back half of that, at least. And I think you've got to be prepared in West Coast shoes to take a little bit of a risk on something like this, that it does pay off, because you get a quality player and a quality person. But I think it's the league's job, Nilly, to have a look at recompensing or covering for the potential concussion effects.
And there is some salary cap exemption. So say in that round 1 next year he gets concussed and he's medically retired, 90% exemption the first year, 75% and then 50%, but nothing after that. And so West Coast probably still on the hook for something like $2.6 million of a $4.5 million guaranteed contract. At worst. And he does want to come to them. I think he'd have to change his mind to stay at Brisbane, which Dev Robertson, his teammate, did a couple of years back. But right now the expectation is that he does want to be a West Coast player next year.
In the rooms post-game, he was in good spirits, so I think he pulled up pretty well.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. The coach, Chris Fagan, is in his late 60s, but the club don't see his time coming very soon.
No, this is a fascinating one, isn't it? So he's got 2 more years on his contract. Now, he's told people through the year, it's probably going to see me out. You know, I don't want to overstay my welcome. He said on 360 today he's got a decision to make. So how do they keep the dream team together? So I spoke to Andrew Wellington, who's the club's president, across the last 24 hours. And his view is that this club would absolutely like to see him coaching past his current contract, but they don't want to twist his arm at 64 years of age. He says, we haven't had that tradition of coaches coaching into their 70s. If you look at codes around the world, it's not unusual. Belichick at the Patriots, Alex Ferguson at Man U, even Wayne Bennett in the NRL. Maybe Chris will set the trend here. So, Brownie, as you know, this club is not into succession plans. They're aware that people will come for Danny Daly as a footy boss or a coach. He's the best in the league at the footy boss status. How do you keep those blokes at this football club as long as possible with this massively wide open window?
Well, I think he'll want to stay as long as that group's certainly got potential success in it, and they're not going anywhere, the Brisbane Lions, with the talent they got there. So I think, you know, no doubt Jack will be after him in a few years' time to help out the Tasmanian thing, but I think most likely they'll end up moving back to Melbourne. He's a grandfather now. He's obviously conscious of being close to the grandkids and his family. But Fags is a young 64-year-old, I think, and you know, like his energy around the group is amazing, and it's not just the team; it's the club. He's the father figure for that club, he's done an amazing job.
Those other names you mentioned are untried coaches. Like Danny Daly has never coached before, so you're giving a 2-time premiership coach, maybe 3-time premiership coach by the time that comes to its end. He's earned the right to decide whether he goes on or not.
I think in the other term, on the age thing, Fags he's not a. I know Kevin Sheedy coached for a long time, but he was like fire and brimstone and on the edge.
Yeah, he's not in the box
and I think,
carrying on.
Well, I'm not talking I'm talking about the positive,
right?
that the energy that it looked like it took a Barassi or a Sheedy to go and coach the way they coached. That doesn't, like the modern day coach, the modern day mentor in particular, Chris Fagan, doesn't look like he might be a duck on a pond, and clearly it takes a lot of energy. But maybe because of his age, he's able to moderate and control his emotional intensity better than most, which puts him in a position to be able to go longer.
Last year he had struggles. He had health problems last year, but he's come a long way this year. It's been an easy year in that regard. And, Pete Carroll's 74 years old today, Las Vegas Raiders. He's the head coach. So
not bad.
He's still got a bit of time to go. He's got 10 more years on Pete Carroll.
He grew up on the gravel of Queenstown, Fags. He'll be absolutely right to go early into his 70s. And Ralphie, Charlie Curnow keeps bubbling away.
So he's desperate to get to Geelong. Now, even Sydney, who's one of his main suitors, knows it. Geelong knows it. Carlton knows it. It just doesn't seem to be any way that it happens. And so Rowan Marshall is a person they've had interest in for a long time. He feels slighted because he wasn't told about Tom Niconing coming in. And so the question will be, who's the priority? I think until the Curnow trade is absolutely extinguished at Geelong, they won't quit. They're a bit opportunistic about this one. They probably want him at the bottom of the market. So even Sydney knows that with Tassie's compromise drafts coming up, they don't even necessarily want to give 2 first-round picks. I just see this as Carlton just being so resolute. They see him as a generational player who will kick 80 goals next year. Not interested in pick 17, not interested in Shannon Neal, even if it was offered to them, which it's not. What's your priority given the events of Grand Final Day?
A ruck. For mine. Definitely a ruckman, I think. If Rowan Marshall's there to take. I know Charlie Curnow's an absolute superstar, but you've got Jeremy Cameron down there. Potentially you have Patrick Dangerfield again. Shannon Neal will be a better player next year. For mine, they were beaten up around the ball.
Well, Henry might come back.
Yeah. The ruck for me, Rowan Marshall.
Christian Petracca too at Adelaide today with his manager and also his wife. Gold Coast also really keen on him. The Melbourne position right now officially is that we're not trading him under any circumstances. He's our man. I don't think anyone believes that. I think everyone believes it's a holding position. And so I think if Petracca was really smart, I think he doesn't mind where he goes, whether it's Gold Coast or Adelaide. You'd say, get me out of Melbourne and get me to one of those 2 clubs. That would start a bidding war. Melbourne gets more for him, and that means he's more chance to get out. Geordie, you know the situation well. What do you think Adelaide would have to give up for Melbourne to say yes to this?
It'd have to be a player and a pick or a couple of picks. I look at someone maybe like a Rochelle who might want to come home. I think that if I'm Melbourne, that would entice me to sort of seriously look at if it's Rochelle and a pick, and he has the desire to get out of Adelaide and come to home. I could see that potentially being a way in which he gets there. Is it a bold move that he's gone over there and been very public? And
it is, but it's the way of the world these days. I think as much as Melbourne's saying...
He wants to force their hand a little bit?
But does that show that he wants out?
Yeah, but Melbourne were aware of it. So
right.
That's the weird thing. I mean, this is a club that said even 2 weeks ago, we want to play finals. We believe we'll play finals. He's their best player. They've lost Judd McVie. They lost Neil Bullen last year. Stephen May's out. And so I think if you were to do that, and I think Melbourne would acknowledge that, we've got to change the messaging. We're taking a step back. We might not play finals, but we'll build for the next period of success.
Bucks, where's a better landing spot, do you reckon, for Christian Petracca? Adelaide or Gold Coast?
Adelaide are probably in need of that bigger-bodied midfielder to support Jordan Dawson. Saligo's a bit smaller. Berry's probably been playing that role, but he's a little undersized.
Gold Coast don't want as much for that style.
He's a luxury at Gold Coast.
Not.
He's a necessity at Adelaide, and then Adelaide might give up more for him.
But in the end, I mean, Melbourne has the whip hand as a contracted player, so who out of the Suns and Adelaide are going to satisfy Melbourne before they satisfy Petracca?
Forward line help, though. If he was prepared to play 50-50 forward, be a huge help to the Gold Coast and that relatively inexperienced forward line.
They might need to get a third club involved.
Adelaide need a better kicker. As a midfielder. I'm not sure. I think Petracca probably can be absorbed. His assets could probably suit Gold Coast more than they would suit Adelaide.
So Gold Coast could bring in 3 academy first-round picks, Christian Petracca and Jamarra Ugle-Hagan for very, very little. So, the rich are getting richer.
Is that genuine, though, Jamarra Ugle-Hagan?
Yep.
Is that...
They're interested in him. They believe their culture can stand up. They've got Jared Harbour as an elite Indigenous liaison. And you know that Dimma Hardwick is an absolute risk taker, and he's taken these risks before, so that could pay off in a big way, but with really strict contract provisions.
Plenty to happen over the month of October. Ralphie, thank you very much for joining us on the couch this year. Your work isn't done, so we're hearing from you all the way through October.